כאן, שר אליך, מחפש מילים.
Hello, welcome to our webinar. Right, there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I want to welcome back our community. Can't believe it's 2 weeks since we last met. And it's been nearly 3 weeks since the horrific the massacre in Israel. And every day we are seeing the most terrible images and we are realizing how horrific that day was. And I think I have to start with the webinar by saying that our hearts are still with every single person in Israel, and our thoughts are with them and our prayers are with them. And as much as it's been 3 very hectic weeks for us, I cannot imagine how hard it's been in Israel, and particularly for the people in the south of Israel. It carries on every day, and it's part of life there, and we very much with you. I also just want to show you the T-shirt that I am wearing, just to know that we are thinking every day of the hostages, the 221 hostages. In South Africa, we're thinking of you every day, and we're praying for you every day and hoping for your safe release. We've had campaigns. We have had, last week I was with 500 church leaders who were all wearing these T-shirts. We will continue the prayers, the solidarity events, talking to our government, talking on the media, and making sure that this is front of mind in South Africa. I am going to start tonight. We've got a slightly different panel tonight. We've assessed what the specific needs are, the most important and urgent issues that we're dealing with in the community, and this webinar is going to look at that. And we've brought on people that we think are going to address those specific areas. So I'm going to start tonight. And as I say, whenever we do these webinars, and I think we are going to do them periodically as the needs arise. And we will, for each webinar, bring on the people that are the correct and relevant people to deal with the current issues. So tonight we're going to start with the National Chairperson of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, Karen Milner. Karen is going to give us an update in terms of, the many, many different issues that we are dealing with in the political sphere and with government. I can just tell you that things are changing literally on the hour. When we were dealing last week, Karen, I'm just remembering with the issue of Naledi Pandor and her famous Hamas phone call. I am just going to say that we were aware of, and maybe I'll just share this little anecdote just to try and tell you how our weeks have been. We started in the morning. Somebody had sent me from Israel, and I think he's actually on the webinar tonight, so thank you. The Hamas website, which actually announced that our minister had made a call to Khania, the leader of Hamas. Literally during the morning, it broke on News 24. Then the department went into an absolute spin about it because Hamas had claimed that she'd actually given solidarity for the massacre. Quickly, DIRCO was in a complete and utter spin, and they came out saying, no. She did speak to him, and of course they didn't want us to know that she'd spoken to him. She did speak to him just to give support in terms of humanitarian aid. We then issued our statement, and I think before we could even get our statement onto our Facebook and website, already it was being covered by News 24. We already had about 20 journalists waiting for comment. And then it carried on. And then suddenly it's just been, that's how the week has been, and every single day has been. And night. So we are going at quite a rapid rate. And Karen, if you can just give us an update in terms of the issues that we've been dealing with.
With pleasure. Thanks, Wendy. And I want to start also, like Wendy, to thank every single person on this call who's come to here, whose interest is in this area, and really to thank our community to start off with. Thank you so much for the donations, for the meals, for the messages of support. They mean everything to us in a very, very difficult time. And I want to say, at a time where we are sometimes feel almost overwhelmed by the challenges being faced at us, just sometimes practical, sometimes the enormity of responding to every single thing that we need to respond to, the courage and the support of our community has held us up and has given us strength. So I want to start off by really thanking this absolutely remarkable, phenomenal Jewish community. It has not been easy to be a Jew in the world at the moment, but it has never been easy, actually, to be a Jew. And yet we sustain ourselves and we persevere. And part of that reason is the kind of community spirit and the kind of community unity and the way our community holds us through these difficult times. So I really wanted to start off with that message, and I know other people will be reinforcing it as we go further and as we deal with the current challenges facing us and how our community can and should be responding. But very specifically, I've been asked to talk, and I want to speak about catching up and bringing the community up to date with what is happening politically in South Africa and how we are responding politically to what's happening in South Africa and where we find ourselves now. I'm going to go quite high level on this. I think most of you are aware of what's been going on, but I'm going to take you, I really think it's important that I take you through it from where we started on the 7th of October, right through to where we are right now politically in South Africa. So I don't need to go through the terrible events of the 7th of October, but you will all recall the government's initial response to the 7th of October massacre was absolutely unacceptable. It did not mention, it in no ways mentioned the victims of the massacre. It showed no compassion and it showed no sympathy. And our initial statement pointed that out and was an initial statement that we sent out, calling the government out, as we often have had to do over the last few years, for the complete inadequacy of the DIRCO statement that they had put out. Unfortunately, it didn't end there. And what we started to find was increasingly problematic statements coming out from DIRCO, coming out from the ANC, and coming out from the government. And if I can say, I wouldn't say it reached a pinnacle, I'd say it reached the absolute lowest that it could go last Shabbos, when President Cyril Ramaphosa came out with his entire NEC in black suits, wearing Palestinian scarves, made no real mention of what had prompted the Gaza war, why it had been caused, Israel's right to defense, but he crossed a number of red lines for the community, which had been crossed during that week as well. And the red lines for our community and why we've come out so strongly are, firstly, the fact that there was no condemnation of the Hamas massacre, and there was an implicit actual justification at some level of the Hamas massacre. Was experienced by the Jewish community as an indication of a lack of any kind of respect for Jewish life. That's why that particular absence was such a red line for the Jewish community. The second was the lack of calling for the hostages to be released. There's no contestation. Nobody contests that taking of hostages is a war crime. That taking of hostages is beyond the pale in any context. So to see a government come out with any kind of statement without calling for those hostages to be released, to call for a ceasefire without calling for those hostages to released, was yet another red line. We had experienced these red lines already in the week moving up to last Shabbos, when the government came out with their particularly egregious position. And unfortunately, in some ways, we were prescient, because already by the middle of that week, we had taken out space in the Sunday Times. We took a full page advert in the Sunday Times where we placed an open letter to President Ramaphosa expressing our dismay and our outrage at the position the government had taken. As I said, in some ways it was unfortunate that we had been prescient in that it was in the interim between us taking the space in the Sunday Times and the letter actually coming out in the Sunday Times, that the Cyril Ramaphosa led his NEC out in the most objectionable, offensive way that he possibly could. Most of you, I don't know if all of you are aware, it was as a result of that, I felt it was very important to get a message out to our community as soon as possible over Shabbat. The easiest way to do that was in a voice note, and really I poured the kind of hurt and outrage of what I knew our community would be feeling into that voice note, which I directed at Cyril Ramaphosa specifically, and that was then made into a video, and I think that it's really unfortunate that that was the situation. It would have been much nicer had we been able to say, oh dear, we overreacted with the Sunday Times advert, and in fact the government have responded appropriately. But unfortunately that was not the case. What's been very, very interesting is the response in the week since then. So what we've been seeing in the week since then is firstly, and Wendy mentioned it, we've on the one hand, we've had this specific response and problematic response to the Gaza attack, the Gaza outrage, the war in Gaza, the Hamas attack, the outrage of Hamas and the war in Gaza. So that's been the one parallel. In parallel with that, we had Minister Pandor, and Wendy made mention of it, having a phone conversation with Hamas, with the head of Hamas, the man who, in fact, it appears, ordered this attack. I think that there were amongst us, many of us who actually thought that when the news first came out, that it was false news. We were trying to establish whether or not it was in fact correct that Hamas had said that she had phoned and offered support. It was then broken in the South African press, and at the same time, it seemed to go global. We put out, the Jewish Board of Deputies put out a short but very, very clear statement, which wasn't really specifically only about the war, but in fact more as South African citizens. And it's a statement, I'm sure Sharice will mention it later, it's a statement that was picked up by most of the press. As Wendy said, we had to respond to an enormous amount of press interest in it, and different press from the press that normally looks at kind of Israel, Palestinian issues. This was a real issue in foreign affairs that was picked up, and we ended our statement saying that Minister Pandor has dragged South Africa into extremely dangerous waters. And I think that message was taken up across the board by many of the journalists. So we had that process happening in parallel. What we've seen since then is in fact a strange kind of backpedaling on the part of the ANC. We are seeing their statements are it's too little too late, don't get me wrong, but their statements, I think it's important to recognize, their statements are no longer crossing the very, very specific red lines that we mentioned. Although they're still offensive and objectionable, they're not actually crossing those red lines. We're seeing them increasingly, they are voicing compassion for Israeli victims as well as Palestinian victims. They are calling for the release of hostages, and they have toned down the implicit blame of the Hamas massacre basically on Israel. 2 minutes. Okay.
I'm going to carry on. We're just going to.
Okay, I'm coming right to the end because so that's where we are, and we're seeing a lot. So I just want to get us to exactly where we are. We're getting response from we are getting people reaching out to us from the ANC. We are seeing backtracking from the ANC, and we will keep you informed because this is a lot of moving parts, and we'll keep you informed there. But we're definitely seeing that. I know that the Chief Rabbi has to go, so I'm happy to talk about the EFF if you want me to.
I think let's just deal with this issue, and then Karen, I'm going to just bring you back in a little bit later, because there are a few issues that I think I'd still like you to touch on, the EFF being one of them.
Perfect. I know he has to go. I'm happy to take a break, and I'll come back and catch us all up.
Perfect. Have a drink of water. Great. Okay, we've asked the Chief Rabbi to come and just share some perspectives from his side, and also very much in terms of the shuls and the impact of the shuls going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Karen, and well done for putting together this webinar as well as the other webinars, which I know are very useful and beneficial to our community. And thank you for inviting me to be on this panel with everybody today. And specifically, to talk about our shuls. I know that Steve Goldberg from the CSO, head of CSO, will make a presentation which will give the broader outline as to the security concerns, particularly for the Shabbos, with the announced pending rally, which is being organized, a pro-Hamas rally, which will lead into the potential of it leading into a motorcade that may come into past some of the shuls at a later point on Shabbos day. But Steve will get into more of those details. What I wanted to share here is, I think, just a bit of a philosophy on this for our shuls and for our community at this particular time. And that is, we're obviously, living through historic times. There's a lot of trauma for the Jewish people. Our beloved state of Israel is, has been under attack, and so many people are suffering in Israel from the massacres, the families now of the captives. So there's a lot of trauma on that side. And globally, this has led to a surge in anti-Semitism throughout the globe, which is, of course, deeply concerning. I do think in that context, and then as a community, we need to chart a path forward in this environment, dealing, with the hostility of the government. But on the other hand, a very interesting phenomenon, a government that is hostile to Israel and pro-Hamas, but on the other hand, a population of South Africans where I think there is a tremendous spirit of unity and diversity, something which has been at the, since the beginning of the new South Africa, with that legacy of Nelson Mandela and our new constitution, which as well as the sense of good nature and tolerance and a spirit of mutual respect in South African society, which has led to, and I know that the Board of Deputies and Wendy can verify this, and I think it's important to verify and to share this, the exact statistics, and Wendy, I'm sure you'll do it a little bit later on in this program. But that, thank God, South Africa has seen, relative to other countries, very, very low rates of anti-Semitic incidents, almost none, recorded and reported to the Board of Deputies, but there have been a few. But in comparison to what's happening overseas, I think it's a blessing that we should be grateful for as a community, and also express our sense of gratitude to our fellow South Africans in terms of that. Having said that, the global environment, as well as South Africa, there are a lot of volatile factors which are at play, and there are many forces that pose particular threats. And so whether it's globally or locally, on the one hand, we appreciate the South African spirit of this country and what that means for our Jewish community to live here in peace and tolerance. And we appreciate as well the fact that we live in a free democracy where the state security apparatus is there to protect us. And as Steve Goldberg will report later on, are very much, police and state security are very much there to protect the constitutional rights of every South African. So we have all of that on the one hand to be grateful for, and that sense of blessing. On the other hand, we do need to operate with responsibility and with caution. I think that it is in that context that I think over many years the CSO with the volunteer teams at our shuls have done outstanding work in training volunteers. And so for many years, we now have built up over many years a tremendous system of security which is both led and overseen by the professional staff of the CSO, but ultimately manned by the volunteers at our shuls. And I know that our rabbis take shul security extremely seriously. There are strong and robust CSO teams right across the country, and that's a tribute to our rabbis and to the shul committees, and it's a tribute to the to the members of the shuls who stand duty outside of their shuls and are the eyes and ears. So I think we can be very grateful for the outstanding work of CSO and our volunteers. And I also want to take the opportunity to pay tribute to our entire community in regards to this. And so therefore Steve will be giving more detailed direction in terms of it, but a very important part of the mandate of CSO, and as part of the philosophy of our communities, to protect Jewish life, but also Jewish way of life, which means that we need to live with dignity and with courage, with a sense of responsibility and caution, taking into account at some moments, like over this Shabbat, there is greater concern, and CSO has provided direction on that. And at the same time, we go to shul, we are proud to be who we are, we don't cower in fear, and we just take the responsible precautions, but we do that with a sense of confidence and a sense of dignity as a community, and a sense of saying that this is who we are. I don't think it is not by coincidence that Hamas attacked on a Shabbos, and that is part of an attack on who we are as the Jewish people. And so part of our response is we go to shul, we do what we do, we go to school, we go about our business, we cautious, responsible, but we live our lives with confidence and with a sense of the robust community that we are part of. Just one last thing on this regard. I know that after next Shabbos, of the 3rd and 4th of November, is the Shabbat of the Shabbos Project, which is taking place here in South Africa and globally, and including in Israel and many places in the world. And there are volunteers all over the world who are working on the Shabbos Project. And in many places, there's a tremendous pressure on them, but the resilience of it is something which is so important. And I want to reassure and assure our community that the challah bakes, which are planned in Durban, Cape Town, Johannesburg, we're doing the challah bakes with a sense of spirit of joy and commitment for Israel. There'll be prayers for Israel, a sense of rallying around. This year's Shabbos Project is dedicated to keeping it together for Israel, and I think that we'll be working very closely with CSO, with all of the volunteers, with the incredible support of everybody in our community, and everything will be done with responsibility, with care, with caution, but also with a tremendous sense of Jewish pride. And to me, that's really what this is about: care, caution, strong Jewish pride, and an appreciation for the blessings that we have here in South Africa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Please, if you can just talk in terms of the progress.
I think Wendy might be having some connection issues. Lisa, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thanks so much, Wendy. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for these essential webinars. We really do appreciate them. In terms of the progressive community, we are keeping up to date with the information that we receive from the board and the CSO. One of our shuls is near to Zoo Lake, where the motorcade is supposed to start on Saturday, that Steve will speak about. So they've adjusted their service time slightly. They won't host their usual brocha or their Saturday Shabbat activities. And of course, they have CSO and their volunteer teams and commercial security on the premises. The other Gauteng shuls, the Cape Town community as well, are carrying on as normal. We're vigilant. We keep in contact with CSO, CAP, and the relevant control rooms. The Durban progressive community shares an entrance with the Holocaust Museum. So of course, their teams have been briefed and are on high alert. And the SAUPJ continues to appeal to the community to remain informed and alert as they continue with their services and continue to review their security measures as advised and as necessary. So we carry on cautiously, we stay informed, and we keep safe. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I'm going to now go across to Stephen. I think there has been, certainly there's been doing the rounds on social media, concerns in terms of this week and potential protests in Jewish areas in Johannesburg. And that's why we asked the Chief Rabbi and Lisa to address the community. So I am going to go now to Steve Goldberg, who is the chairperson of the Gauteng CSO, just to give us a little bit of guidance in terms of what they are seeing. And before we go to Steve, I just want to reiterate what we said in the first webinar, that we are very angry with our government's international relations policies, and we've certainly made it known. We've put it in the Sunday Times. We haven't shied away from it. But in terms of the security cluster, we have had incredible success and incredible support throughout the last 3 weeks. And I want to acknowledge them. And I also want to acknowledge our CSO, who really are just an unbelievable support to South African Jewry. Steve, will you come in and just talk about, just in general, our security and safety issues, and specifically this weekend in Johannesburg?
Thanks, Wendy, and good evening, everybody. So I think it's common cause that it's been a tough few weeks for the community. And we've seen a high level of anxiety and angst across the community about the security and safety issues that we may face. There's a number of reasons, a number of underlying causes for this type of anxiety, and I think it's very important that we acknowledge all of them. I think we have seen unprecedented events in Israel, and we've been living in an environment in South Africa, which I don't want to go into. It's been discussed by my colleagues, around the views of the government and the feelings towards Hamas, towards Israel, and perhaps a projection of that onto our community. With all of that said, at the CSO, we've been working very hard to make sure that the community is kept safe and secure, and that the community has been kept informed throughout the time. We've had numerous interactions with all of the various organizations in the community to make sure that we discharge our responsibility for protecting Jewish life and for protecting Jewish way of life in South Africa. And it's from there that I want to start the general discussion about security in the community. And I want to echo what the Chief Rabbi said earlier around finding the correct balance between Jewish life and Jewish way of life. Our job in the CSO is to balance those two things, Jewish life and Jewish way of life. I said it in the last webinar, the easiest thing in the world would be to tell everyone in the community, go home, lock yourself up, and then there's absolutely no risk to anybody. On the other extreme, we could take down all the walls, take down the cameras, send all the volunteers home and say, there's no problem, let's have the most amazing Jewish way of life. And I think we'd all agree that neither of those approaches is correct. And what we need to do is find the right balance in the middle between making sure that we have the right level of safety, that the risks that we take are appropriate and that they're managed, and that our community can go forward and enjoy the beautiful, amazing Jewish way of life that's unique to the South African Jewish community. My call on everybody tonight is to come and meet me at the fence. And what I mean by that is the CSO has done a huge amount of hard work, careful work, together with security partners, together with the state, to make sure that we take every step that is reasonably necessary to make sure that this community is safe. The CSO is part of the community. Our children, our wives, and ourselves go to the same schools, the same restaurants, the same shuls that everybody else goes to, and we share a destiny as the CSO with each and every member of this community. My call to you tonight is come meet me at the fence. We've done what is reasonable, responsible, and necessary to make sure that this community is safe and protected at all times. And that includes Shabbat, which we're going to go into in more detail. My job in the CSO, together with my colleagues and together with the other regional CSO officers, is to provide the right level of protection that the Jewish community can go about our daily business and go about our way of life with as little disruption as possible. The job of the community is to make sure that within the framework, within the safety, within the security that's provided, everyone needs to show up and do your part. Our community survives and thrives on us being able to stand up, be courageous, be who we are, and make sure that we remain part of the community. And that's my call to you for Shabbat. There's security, it will be safe. There's more security probably than we've ever seen around our shuls and around what may happen. Not what will happen, what may happen. Come, show up, do your part, meet me at the fence. Let's talk a little bit about what Saturday may hold. So our understanding of the situation currently is that there's been a call by the Palestine Solidarity Alliance's Youth League, together with BDS, to meet at the Zoo Lake, to have some kind of a discussion and a briefing there, following which it appears that they're planning to have a motorcade, and the motorcade may come through Jewish areas. They also indicated that they may have a protest and that they have not disclosed the location of the protest. What you would have heard in what I've just told you is a lot of maybes and mays and perhaps. And the reason I've said that is because there is still quite a high level of uncertainty around what might happen. From a CSO and security perspective, we've planned for the worst case scenario. That's our job. We plan for the worst and we hope for the best. The security that we've put in place for Shabbat around all aspects of our community is on the basis that it will be a protest that will go through our areas, that it will be large, that it will be hostile, and that it will be a high temperature. I'm not saying those things will happen. I'm just saying that we're planning for it. And you should take a lot of comfort from the fact that we're planning for it, because the level of security will be high and appropriate for anything that can happen on Shabbat. As it stands today, and things may change, there might be something different tomorrow, what we're proposing to the community is that shul starts early and ends early, and that would give the opportunity for people to be home, enjoying a whiskey, enjoying lunch, before any convoy or protest arrived in our area. And that would mean that we minimize the friction between our community and whoever comes to exercise their right to protest. Minimizing the friction is important. I don't think we need to subject ourselves to whatever they might be saying or the slogans that they might be shouting on the one hand. And on the other hand, there's no necessity for us to engage with people who are expressing their political views. So again, if I'm just to summarize what I'm saying, is we have taken every step to the point where I'm comfortable. My family will be participating, walking to shul, doing what we do. I encourage everybody, please come meet me at the fence. You have, in my view, actually an obligation to go to shul on Shabbat. Why should we be coward? There's no reason for it. We have security. We have everything that we need to be able to go about our business on Shabbat. And please make use of what we've provided in terms of the security, in terms of the safety, in terms of making sure that Shabbat can go ahead and that everyone can go do what needs to be done. Lastly, before I hand back to Wendy, I'd just like to remind everybody of the emergency numbers of the CSO. So if you see anything that's concerning or you need assistance in any respect, the Johannesburg numbers 086 18 000 18, the Cape Town numbers 086 18 911 18. Those control rooms are there for the community. They man 24/7. And if you have any concerns, please don't hesitate, just call.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to just ask you if you can please put those numbers in the chat. I got them wrong last week, so I think I'm going to put the onus on you to please put them in. Yeah, so that everybody's got them. Yeah, that they've got them, that they can see them. All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the CSO people who are going to spend their Shabbat in the streets of Glen Hazel and the surrounds. Okay, so I want to just pick on an issue before I cross over to Adrian, just very quickly, about the anti-Semitism levels that were alluded to earlier. And I just want to say, because my office, my colleague David Sachs, monitors the anti-Semitism incidents, it's very, very important. If you do experience anti-Semitism, you need to report it to us, even if you think it's something minor. If it's something that you've seen on social media, please let us know. I will post up our email address. But it is important that you let us know. We will assess it, and we will advise you in terms of whether we think it is something that we should take forward. We are currently in the process of looking at laying criminal charges on one incident. We have a few incidents that have been reported to us that we are dealing with. I do want to say that we are, and I think we all know, and I said it on the last webinar, sadly, as the situation is going to progress, we are going to see more and more incidents of anti-Semitism. We did send a community letter. If you didn't receive it, please let us know, just in terms of our thinking, in terms of all different scenarios. If you experience anti-Semitism, if you are a student at university and something comes up in one of your class WhatsApp groups, if you are in a workplace environment and something, just to give you some guidance in terms of dealing with those issues. But I am available, my colleagues are available to advise you should you need our help. We are all available. Just on that, just also to mention, we are already seeing some businesses being intimidated and threatened, some small Jewish businesses, calls for boycotts against them. Today, in our office, we spoke to 3 different small businesses and 1 big business that are being threatened. And we are able, we sat with the relevant people, and we came up with some ideas and some ways that we can support them. And really, if that does happen to you, we are available. We are there to support you. I'm going to go across now to the Cape Town Board of Deputies, to Adrian Jacobson. I think we'd like to just know what's happening in Cape Town. Adrian, can you switch your camera on? Thank you.
Okay, so hi everybody. It may be. Hi everybody. So we may be a Cape update, but our frame of reference is definitely a national lens. We are part of national, and everything that we have been doing has been with the most incredible support and the most incredible relationship and part of our national. So how we are in Cape Town is that we are going through a hard time. We are reeling from the most horrific acts. Our hearts are, as Karen said earlier, together with the victims and their families, the hostages. More and more each day, we are uncovering connections, people that we know, and we are really going through a difficult time. But we are coming together as a community. We are working in the most collaborative way across the community with all our organizations, with the CSO, with the Zionist Fed, in such a united and strong way that there is so much solace and comfort from that level of working. So in terms of our advocacy work, we've had the most incredible letters of support from the US Consulate, from the German Consulate, from the ACDP, from the Freedom Front, from the DA, from members of parliament, from Bridges of Peace. And the support and the outpouring has really been incredible. We've had an amazing meeting yesterday together with the Zionist Fed. We met with ACDP leader, Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, Steve Swart, MP, Bridges for Peace, International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem, and pastors from 20 churches in the Western Cape to work out how we can collaborate and to spread the word of support for Israel and for our community. We're in contact with UCT, who have heightened their security on campus and are fully aware of the situation in Israel. The primary focus of UCT is on the safety of all students on campus, and we are currently awaiting a response from Stellenbosch University at the moment. In terms of the Cape media, and here again, because Sharice is going to do a media update, is just to say that we are part of a coordinated media group. Incredible to work with Sharice and David and Wendy, and everything that we do is getting our messaging in line and on track. Having said that, the specific board interviews or comments have been on Daniel Bloch, our executive director, has been on SABC News. We've been on Eyewitness News on KFM. We've been on Cape Talk. Daniel has been on Cape Talk. Independent media, Cape Argus, News 24, Voice of the Cape, and the SA Jewish Report. On our social media, we have been sharing various information on a daily basis. We've created a WhatsApp group to share information with the community, and the email on that, I can put it in the chat group. It's sajbd2@ctj.co.za. I'll put it on the group. We've also got an anti-Semitic hotline. If there is any incidents in the Cape South African Jewish Board of Deputies anti-Semitism hotline, again, I'll put this in the group. The number is 027 79 994 5573. We've launched our Cape South African Jewish Board of Deputies Community Wellness Helpline for any members that need to wish to speak to a trained counselor, and I can put that again in the chat. In terms of our security update, we have Sea Point, who has been specifically targeted as an area known to be Zionist, and there are groups that are calling for specific action aimed at disrupting Sea Point by walking the streets with Palestinian flags, intimidating businesses to support their narrative and sort of cause general agitation. And this is planned for Saturday. So what we have done is we've had meetings with the City of Cape Town, we've had meetings with law enforcement, Metro Police, Traffic, Sea Point, CID, ward councillors, SAPS, and they have put together a robust plan for the Saturday protest, and they are committed to protecting all citizens. We've received a lot of questions relating to the granting of permits. There's the Gathering Act, which is very available online to read, which concerns various rules and regulations concerning the right to protest. But what was really fantastic is that we had a meeting with Councillor Nicola Joel this morning, and she put out a very strong statement on Facebook and on social media. And she said, you know, while there may be no legal means to prevent a person exercising their constitutional right to protest, that the city is and may be limited in certain responses to permit requests. The law enforcement agencies, the city, in conjunction with SAPS, CID, the Metro Police, will work round the clock to assure adherence to permit requirements, to assure adherence to law and safety for everybody. And she ended with a lovely appeal, which said, "We all hope and pray for peace. Dividing our city and fighting between us will not resolve the crisis in the Middle East." So we are also engaging with the Premier and the Mayor about the ongoing weekly protests. And in terms of our security, I also would like to take a moment just to thank the CSO for the incredible work that they are doing. Our community in attending shuls and our schools are protected at all times, and the CSO will continue to protect us and ensure that we live our Jewish way of life. We also, if you could report any suspicious activity or potential security threats specifically related to the Jewish community, The helpline, as was said earlier, is 086 18 91118.
Thanks, Adrian. If you can just put those in the chat, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, I just, if I could just ask Karen just to come back. She was just going to tell us about the EFF. We're getting a lot of people calling us about the hideous remarks that were made by Julius Malema. And if you could just share that with us, just in terms of our response to that, Karen.
Sure, with pleasure. It's really important to look at what's happening with the EFF in the context of the EFF's politics. So his comments were absolutely hideous, but he's a populist looking for any attempt, anything he can throw that will gain him attention. We're not taking him lightly, but it's very important. And we are looking at a number of options, just across the board, we're looking at a number of options, but it is very important to recognize that what Julius Malema wants is he wants attention, and the kind of spectacle that he created was about gaining attention. We don't want to feed in to his attention-getting agenda. Neither us, in fact, I've seen quite a lot of the pro-Palestinian activists, interestingly enough, having a go at him as well, to say that he is using the Jewish community, he's using the Palestinian cause as a football to further his own agenda. It's not to say we're not taking him seriously, but in fact, the shops, etc., that have been targeted have responded absolutely brilliantly. I'd really recommend that you look at the kind of statements that Woolworths have made in response to his outrage. And quite honestly, I recommend to the community to recognize him for what he is and to try not to give him what he wants. He wants to hurt us. He wants us to be outraged. He wants to become headline news for the next week. And we really aren't going to give him what he wants, while at the same time, we will have a very, very careful look at what he said and decide on our action based on that.
Thanks, great. Thanks so much, Karen. Thank you. If I can just ask panelists to turn off cameras when they're not on. Thank you. I just wanted to, I think we're going to just, last week I had an amazing treat for everybody at the end of our webinar. When we shared with you the Ponte, which incidentally is authentic, I can guarantee it. We have another treat for you this evening, so please, at the end of the webinar, we will share it with you. I'm going to ask my colleague Charisse to come and share with us what's going on in the media, the South African media, which causes quite a lot of high blood pressure. So, Karen, sorry, Charisse, if you can please talk to us about what's going on in the media and how we, with the Zionist Federation, are responding to the media issues.
Thank you, Wendy. First, at the outset, just to echo what Adrian said in terms of us working very closely together. We also work very closely with the Zionist Fed. We coordinate our responses, and it's reassuring to know that we work together as a team. Dan, perhaps you can share that first slide. We've been talking about the media, and the slide shows kind of the week before the attack and what has been happening until today. And you can see the huge amount I'm sure you know it, you don't need those graphs, but it's nice to have a pretty picture to look at. And what are we seeing over there? Initially, the media were interested in what was happening in Israel. They were having debates. Subsequent to that, the media have been following the rallies. There have been 4 pro-Jewish ones that we've got attention for. There was the official Zionist Fed SAPI one. There was Zionist Fed one. There was second was the SAPI one. The third one, there was one spontaneous grassroots event in Sandton held by the Great Alexandria Progressive Forum. And this morning, the Zionist Fed organized an event for embassies who lost citizens in the attack, and the SABC was there. But of course, the media also cover the other side's rallies, and that is where much of that hateful speech has come. If you want to read a really excellent article on the ANC rally, I recommend Rebecca Herdis's one, which is in Politics Web. And if you're not already subscribed to Politics Web, I recommend you do, because that is really where the excellent media is coming out, especially in terms of pro-Israel stuff. There is, of course, a lot of negative stuff happening and a lot of nasty pieces coming out. Where do we start? We are monitoring them, we're aware of them. Where we can, we respond to them. If we can't get it on the platform that they happen, we try and use another platform. For example, David Sachs will have a Sunday Times article coming out that was initially sent to News 24. We use every opportunity that we can to get media in. Dan, I don't know if you want to share that second slide. That's just a slide of SAJBD mentions that we've had over the last 3 weeks. So you can see that we definitely out there. I'm sure if I had to do the same for the SAZF, they'd have similar kinds of views. What can I say? What is coming out is really ugly, but it's not as bad as things have been in the past. We have a voice. We're not going to win every single fight. We're not going to answer to every single article, but where there are transgressions, we are going to take it up. I know Rowan is talking next, and he can talk a little bit about and respond to that question, where the media get things that wrong, for example, the bombing of the hospital, what they're doing. In terms of radio and talk show, sure. Again, we've been proactive in that we've written to all the stations, we've recommended different voices so we don't only get the same anti-Israel ones. We rely on our community also to let us know if there's something that they've heard. We've currently had one writer reply to a show that was on SAFM. We've got 2 complaints at the moment with SABC regarding a spokesperson who represents herself as representing the Jewish community, but in fact isn't. So yeah, we're here to try and advocate for balance. If there's anything that you are concerned about, please, you can email my colleague Roseanne on sajbd@sajbd.org, and just know that at the end of the day, this will pass. That spike you saw is probably going to go down a little bit. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. If it's getting a little bit too much for you, I recommend you just change channels, look at something else, take a deep breath, because we're in it for quite a long time still. So yeah, thank you.
Cherise, before I let you go, there was a question in the chat, which I thought you might want to respond to. So I have actually been trying to respond to many of the questions in the chat directly. Cherise, I sent it to you a little bit earlier. I don't know if did you receive it?
Is that the one? I did see it. I thought Rowan, because I think if that's the one about correcting false news and false statements. I know that's the Zionist Fed are responding to. So I don't know if Rowan wants to deal with that one.
Okay. Let me just see here. There was one question. I think I posted it earlier. If you could just give me 1 second, because I think it's something that I should be passing on to you. Okay, I'm going to look for the question. You'll come back. Rowan, are you here with us? I know Rowan charged back from the airport so that he could be with us tonight. So thank you so much. Cherise, I will pose that question to you as soon as Rowan is finished. Thank you, Rowan.
Great, good to be here. Thanks, Wendy. Let me just respond to that one question that was asked earlier in terms of how does one correct some of this false information. We've certainly been working around the clock, monitoring the media very closely for misinformation and incorrect facts. The hospital bombing was a case in point where the press rushed to listen to the Hamas propaganda, claiming that this was a hospital bombing, but numerous evidence presented by Israel, footage from multiple angles, intercepted communication images proved decisively that this was a misfired rocket. And we've been in instances like that, going after all the media, getting corrections, complaining to the Ombudsman in cases, complaining to the BCCSA, and also providing facts. We've got a news channel where we're providing twice daily facts and information to the community and to anyone. We've also got a SAFI one for the Christian community, and we're just trying to ensure that everyone is aware and knowledgeable. We also will be releasing a fact sheet just so that the community is aware of some of the misinformation going on at the moment. Is there a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, for example? How much water is Israel actually supplying or is obligated to supply to Gaza? All the kinds of issues like that, law of proportionality. and everything else. And we'll be arming the community with that, with all that information. And if you have any queries or issues or want to point anything out in the media, please contact us. And Sharice also mentioned, as she said, the board is working very closely with us as well on this issue. And we will be dealing with the media and ensuring that Israel's position is there. And also we're working very hard on social media to ensure that we counter any of the issues there. I also just want to briefly talk about the boycott issues, which was spoken about earlier, that we have seen influential voices from Malema to people like Yusuf Abramji, people who are very influential on social media, have been calling for boycotts, specifically Woolworths and also McDonald's. And we will start seeing more, I imagine. We've also seen the Muslim Judicial Council issue a statement that they're going to be declining certification of goods from Israel. So far, this is a lot of rhetoric, a lot of informal calls. If it does turn into anything more organized, anything more sophisticated, we will be dealing with it. We're working with the relevant companies. And also when community businesses are targeted, as we've seen, we will ensure that we're working with all of those. And I urge anyone, if there are issues, if you feel targeted as a business, if you need any help, please reach out to us and we'll do our best to assist. And the most powerful response to boycotts is to go and force and buy products and support the goods and services of Jewish businesses and any company that's targeted, ensure that they supported and ensure that they are given the support that they actually need. So, of course, the Zionist Federation is working around the clock on all these issues, ensuring that we're informed, ensuring that the media is informed, working across the political space. I also just want to mention two other areas very briefly. As you've seen, the usual calls for the Israeli embassy to be closed. We've heard calls for El Al and others. You may have seen that Pandor yesterday actually walked back a little bit some of that rhetoric. And we can, for the time being, say that the Israeli embassy, which is working very hard to ensure that it remains, ensure that we have a connection to Israel, ensure that El Al flights continue. We're ensuring that is all happening at the moment. And please reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns or need to share any information with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rowan. And I think what the Fed has also been doing, which has been absolutely extraordinary, is that they've been providing excellent webinars and Zooms and educating us, because we certainly are not getting the education from our local media on the whole. So thank you very much and well done. I think we've answered all the questions now, except a few questions that I want to now respond to. And this is how I have probably received in excess of about 20, 30 calls just today on this particular issue. So I'm going to use this opportunity. It wasn't today, it was a week ago that a woman in our community from an organization called South African Jews for Free Palestine gave an interview on SABC, and our community was outraged. I have to say, and this is what I've said to everybody that's phoned me today, we live in a constitutional democracy. She can talk. Thank God we can all talk, and we've had an unbelievable opportunity to have our voices heard, whether it be TV, whether it be radio, whether it be print media, whether it be on social media. We really have had an incredible opportunity. But everybody in this constitutional democracy has got that right to speak, and we're not in the business of silencing people. So what I am going to say to our community is you have a choice. You don't have to watch those things, and you don't have to give them views. You can listen to people who actually make sense and who actually have, and we want to listen to. I wrote an article this week for the Jerusalem Post, and I wanted to make it very clear that although some of the other voices are very loud and very, particularly our government voices, ANC voices, EFF voices have been very vociferous and very angry over the last few weeks. There have been some amazing friends of our community, and I had the real privilege last Friday to be with 500 Christian leaders who came. They were all wearing T-shirts like my T-shirt. They came together in the church in Katlehong to pray for Israel and to pray for the release of the hostages. And it was really one of the most inspiring events to be surrounded by so many friends. I know in Cape Town, there was a similar kind of gathering of 1,000 leaders. That is just incredible. And what I'm hearing in churches around the country, I can tell you that the opposition parties have been absolutely phenomenal. And I want to end, and my treat for you today was at this event in Katlehong a week ago. The speaker of the Johannesburg City Council, a friend by the name of Colleen Makubela, she insisted on speaking. And I want to share with you, I hope that you will listen very carefully and that you will share this message because I found it to be very heartwarming during this very difficult time. Thanks, Dan, and thank you for such a wonderful webinar. Thank you, Dan Stillerman.
As Congress of the People, we stand with Israel. And it's important that we get our voice heard. In the book of Exodus, I think it's chapter 1, the Bible tells us that there arose a king who did not know about Joseph and what Joseph had done to the nation of Egypt. And I want to take it further to say there also arose a generation at the time who did not know about Joseph and his contribution. In this nation, we are suffering the same fate. There has arisen a generation that does not understand the contribution of the Jewish people in this nation. We have a generation of people that are wearing scarves because there's money attached behind it. But they have forgotten where we come from. You know who was the leader of that South African Communist Union? It was Leon, the twin brother of Norman Levy. These were Jewish people who were assisting, fighting side by side with our liberation movement. The Freedom Charter was born out of that Congress. There were 6 signatories in that Freedom Charter. You know who was the 6th signatory? It was a Jewish Leon. He signed the Freedom Charter, which is the bedrock of our institution. Because it's important that when trends change, you don't forget who helped you in your need. It was Dennis Cooney. He was a Jewish man, a lawyer, who chauffeured Nelson Mandela when he was in hiding. When Nelson was arrested to go to Robben Island, you must read your history. It was a Jewish chauffeur who was protecting them. Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and them, they were staying in Lily's farm in Rivonia. You know who owned Lily's farm? It's still there for you to go to history. So besides the biblical perspective that we're looking at, there were serious Jewish lawyers that defended your mother, my mother, your grandparents, that made sure that we birthed this democracy. It was the Chackelsons. It was the Easy Mesos, Joe Slovo, who stood when it was not popular. They faced arrest, they faced detention, they lost their lives, they were exiled. They suffered the same pain and identified with us. They identified with our struggle. They identified with mothers who were left without children. But you know, the one that struck me the most was Selma. I don't know if you know Selma Browdy. Have you heard of Selma Browdy? Because you can't just sing only. You must read so that you are informed, so that you fight the struggle that you know. Selma Browdy, she was a councillor in the city of Johannesburg, a Jewish woman alone. She fought alone for the electrification of Soweto. That's how Soweto got electricity. So you want to come and tell me today that we must not stand with the Jewish people? You know what the problem is with this nation? lest we forget. Lest we forget. It's our responsibility to teach our young people, to teach the upcoming politicians, the history of the struggle of South Africa is not written in Palestine. It was not sponsored by Palestine. It was not fought side by Hamas. It was fought by the Jewish blood, the Jewish resources, the Jewish mothers and fathers.
Right. I'm hoping that inspired you. It certainly inspired me when I was sitting there. Just wanted to let you know the book that the speaker had just read, we had given her, it's called Mensches in the Trenches by Jonathan Anser. And if you want to learn those stories, please let us know. We do have copies in our office. And I just wanted to just end by saying, yes, there are some, let's look at our friends. Let's look at all the friends around our country. Let's look at the friendly media that have stood by us. And I want to just make mention of our own amazing media. And earlier this week, we were at the Jewish Achievers, and just to thank our Jewish Report that really gives us important understanding of these issues that we are not getting else in many other places. And also to our Chai FM, we're very blessed to have a community radio station that also gives us those insights. So I think I want to end off with that, and we will assess the situation, and when we feel another webinar is required, we will call on the good service of our friend Dan Stinneman to come and help us with that. I think it's really important that our community be updated during quite challenging times. And again, our prayers are with the people in Israel and for the safe relief of our hostages.
זה אני כאן, שר אליך, מחפש מילים יפות, להאיר בי את הלילה, לסדר קצת מחשבות, מרגיש שקצת איבדתי את הדרך, החיים שלי קצרים מדי, בשביל לחיות אותם בערך. אבל באמת, שמתחת 1000 מסכות אני עוד ילד עם עיניים בורקות, בא אליך בידיים ריקות, מחפש אותך בכל העיר, רץ במעגל כבר אין לי אוויר, רק עוד רגע והבוקר יאיר. זה אני כאן, שר אליך, וצריך מילה טובה, שתמיס בי את הפחד, שארגיש מעט קרבה, כמו שדה שמתרגש לגשם, גם המבול הזה שבי, עוד ייכנע לקשת, אבל באמת, שמתחת 1000 מסכות, אני עוד ילד עם עיניים בורקות, בא אליך בידיים ריקות, מחפש אותך בכל העיר, רץ במעגל כבר אין לי אוויר, רק עוד רגע והבוקר יאיר. מתחת 1000 מסכות, אני עוד ילד עם עיניים בורקות, ובא אליך בידיים פתוחות, מחפש אותך בכל העיר, רץ במעגל כבר אין לי אוויר,